Welcome, everyone, to Chirping Zebras, episode 63, the Brad Marchand episode. Mark Riley alongside Gino Binder Jr. As always, we're coming to you from the interwebs. We're not at AOA Studios, but we want to give them a shout out, as always, because they do all our editing, and we're usually in studio, and we'll be back there soon. Also want to, off the hop, thank our sponsor, the Referees Crease, your one-stop shop for all your refereeing needs. And Gino, last week, Cedric Maxwell. What an incredible.
He was awesome. What a great guy, and he couldn't have been, those stories he had, everything was awesome.
Oh no, it was incredible, and like you said, just down to earth. I mean,
Yep.
he was a superstar, and just a great guy, and the story told about Indy. We got a clip on that that'll be out in the interwebs. Just hilarious.
Yeah, he was awesome. And this is the Brad Marchand episode, and the Bruins put out a thing. Like, he's on Florida now, but the Bruins put out a thing from like when he got drafted all the way until he got traded. And I didn't think I was going to get emotional over Brad Marchand ever in my life. And that was like, it was just like the highlights after highlights, and like he was like everything like a Boston Bruins should be, right? Like tough,
Yep.
Score goals, not afraid to drop them. Like an aggravator, right? Like the whole thing. And he wore that B with pride. And, when he was on the mic talking, like in his first interview on, with a Florida, like he still referred himself as a Bruin, and like you I hope Bruins fans really appreciate what Brad Marchand did for the city. And, he was, he's right up there with one of my favorite Bruins. And the fact that he started a line brawl in my first game in Providence. But other than that.
Well, you're funny you mentioned Providence. He was one of the guys that really came up through the system.
Mm-hmm.
And he came when he moved up to Boston, he was a fourth liner.
Yeah.
And he really worked his way into the role he eventually had. Because when he came up, he was just kind of a scrapper and a shit disturber, and then he became a bona fide superstar.
Yeah,
one of the top wings in the league. And so
playing for his country, the whole thing, yeah.
One cool fact, when the Bruins won the Cup in 2011, my brother, who, as we've talked about, who is the Bruins dentist, Dr. Ted Riley, and has since retired. Now my nephew took over the job. He was on Brad Marchand's duck boat in the parade. So
yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. When they drove by, it's kind of cool. You see your older brother. Of course, he's an accomplished dentist, and I tell dick jokes for a living, but that's beside the point. That's okay. So, but the playoffs, as of right now, Florida's up on Toronto because Toronto's choking as always, and probably will continue to do so. And Carolina looks unbeatable. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how anyone can beat them. Of course, out west.
Yeah, you got your Vegas Knights. They got put to bed.
I got my Golden Knight shirt on for a reason, even though they got put to bed by the Oilers. Because our guest today is perfect leading. Our guest today
absolutely.
is the play-by-play voice of the Golden Knights, and used to be the play-by-play voice for the Boston Bruins. I want to welcome Dave Goucher to Chirping Zebras. Welcome, Dave.
Well, hi, guys. How are you?
Good.
Speaking of duck boats.
What a
You
call.
had me thinking about who was on. I was lucky enough to be on one of those duck boats. Who was, I think, Bob Beers, who I used to do the games with on radio. I think Rich Shirtenly, formerly Dutcher and Rich on the Sports Hub.
Yeah. Big fan.
I think he was on my duck boat, and a bunch of other people that I have no idea who they were, but somehow they get passes to get on.
Probably your dentist.
Well, and your brother used to be my dentist.
Oh, really?
Wow.
And then I moved to Vegas just to get away from him. No,
I bet the dentists aren't as good out in Arizona. Or no, where are you? Nevada.
I'm in Nevada, Mark. Yeah.
Anything past Mississippi, us East Coasters don't know
It's
anything.
like it doesn't exist. What
Yeah.
you get. Yeah.
Nothing.
No, they're fine. Actually, you know what? Here they've got to be pretty good in the entertainment field, right? Make sure everything's straight,
Buttoned
pearly
up.
whites. So, but yeah, I hadn't thought about who the hell was on my duck boat for a long time until just now. But that's my vague memory of it, anyways.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was one of the most iconic calls that we still hear today.
Yeah.
Well, it was a lot of fun, guys. I always think it was just if you do what I do for a living, and back then, I always, the Bruins were the team that hadn't won it in a long time, right? If you think about it back then, and I had watched all these other teams. The Patriots had won 3, their first 3 of 6. The Celtics had won in 08. The Red Sox had won at that point, I think in 04 and 07, I believe. And and I had watched all those other parades. And I just remember thinking, boy, that they'll have a chance to have their own duck boat parade. That was some of my rudimentary thinking. But anyway, that's kind of where it came from. Is I quite honestly, as much as I loved all the other teams winning, I was thinking it would be nice if the Bruins got a chance to have a parade. And fortunate enough, they did.
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah, no, that was quite a run in 2011. And we had some of those players on prior podcast, and it was a prior episode, and it was pretty cool.
Can I tell you a quick Brad Marchand funny story? So, because I heard you talking about him. So, he came up the year before and couldn't score. The year they lost to Philly, which I've tried to burn out of my brain.
Me too. I was in Philly in that game. I was working the minors. I was in Philly, yeah.
Hours and hours of therapy to get it out of my brain. So the next year he came up, and as you said, Mark, he started on the 4th line, earned his way up, and then was playing with Patrice Bergeron and Mark Recchi. If you heard that clang in the background, that's Rosie Goucher flipping my dog, flipping over her dog bowl. Lack of food, like she's wasting away here in the desert. So this is her way of taking it to the streets. You'll hear a few more clangs. She just flipped it over. So, but anyway, Marchand comes up that next year, ends up playing with Bergeron and Recchi, and he sets, which I still think is the Bruins' rookie record for playoff goals. I think he had 11 goals in the playoffs that year. Wow. So the next year, back when we used to be on the team bus, now they have separate media buses for the broadcasters and stuff. We were leaving it was a morning skate, and I'm sitting like almost across from Marchand. I don't know why. It was like an optional skate. And he gets on the phone because it's always, is it Marchand? Is it Marchand? So his rookie year, he was Brad Marchand. So he breaks all these records, Bruins rookie records for goals in the playoffs. I hear him get on the phone and he's calling somebody. And he's sitting right across from me. He goes, "Hey, this is Brad Marchand." I'm like, "What the hell is this?" all last year, you scored all these goals. Now you're changing how you say your name. So I didn't want to say anything to him. So I said something to one of the media relations guys. He goes, "Well, he doesn't really care." I said, "Well, I care. I care."
Right. Yeah.
So I think, and you guys would know better than me on this, I think until Jack Edwards retired, he was saying Marchand, and the radio guys were saying Marchand. I think Judd Serrato was doing the right. So they said it 2 different ways. I was like,
That's excellent.
I can't. Yeah, I mean, my brain's small enough as it is. I got a tough enough time. Just pick something and stick. I could care less what you call yourself.
If that's not a Boston story, I don't know what is.
Oh yeah, Marchand.
Yeah, right.
Which one is it?
Figure it out. That's what I decide.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, most people in Boston call him Machi. So
Yeah, Machi. We miss Machi.
So I wanted you to touch on, because we talked. I mean, obviously, Gino and I came up through the ranks as referees, worked the minor leagues, and with the goal of making the show in the NHL. I made it for a week, but that's a story we've told many times. You kind of did the same thing as a broadcaster, no?
I did, Mark. Yeah, it took me 7 years. I'll give you the short version. I went to BU, managed to graduate, barely get out. But I'm one of those rare, I don't know if I'm rare, but a lot of people that go to college and they major in this, but they never do anything with it. They go in a completely different field. I actually got, majored in broadcast journalism in school. So I was in the College of Communication at BU. Did a couple of years of student radio, WTBU, which nobody listened and nobody cared. And
So you're making mistakes.
They weren't missing anything. It was awful. But
What's funny, Dave, not to interrupt you, but I went to school. I went to Curry for communications,
in Milton.
television sportscasting. I was on WMLN. I had a reggae show, so that'll tell you how many people didn't listen there.
Wow. Do you still have those tapes?
You know what? Unfortunately, I don't. I wish I did. All
Or
I did
maybe
was play
fortunately you
Bob-
burned him. I
I
don't.
played Bob Marley almost every other song. That was all I knew. But
Well, I did a couple of DJ shows. It was like I did like the rock and roll lunch on Tuesdays and the Sunday brunch on Sundays. The Sunday show was tough because it cut into the Saturday night social activity. If you had to drag your ass out of bed at 8:30 on a Sunday morning, which was stupid. I don't know why I did that. But then I did 2 years of play-by-play too. So I did hockey, football, baseball. So, I mean, I always joke around, guys. It wasn't very good, and I'm sure it wasn't great in college, but it was good enough. You know, I did 45 games of BU hockey for the most part. Did the bean pot of the old Boston Garden, the Hockey East playoffs, the Frozen Four. But it was just it was the Final Four back then. I don't know when they put the Frozen part in, but it was long after I was out of there. And so I made a resume tape. I remember going into like the studio at College of Communication, the big reel-to-reel machines, and cutting and splicing and screwing it up and having to start over. And anyway, I went to Wheeling, West Virginia, which is it's about an hour southwest of Pittsburgh. The big wheel keeps spinning around.
we've been there.
Oh yeah, I've been
Oh,
there
my
many
goodness.
times. Yeah.
I was there 2 years. I lived there, and but it was kind of funny back then. You know, we're talking the mid '90s, and the Penguins had just won back-to-back then, like in '91 and '92, I think.
Okay.
So it was an hour from Pittsburgh and Wheeling, an hour apart. So it was a very rich hockey environment. You wouldn't think it, but the iron was real hot, you know.
Yeah.
So I was there 2 years, and then I always joke around, if 2 had turned into 5 or 6 or 7, I might be working at the mall or something. I don't know if I would have hung in there that long. But then I did 5 with the Providence Bruins. So I did the P Bruins for 5. I grew up in Pawtucket, so when I got that job, it was twofold. It was, one, I was able to come back home, and 2, I was able to take a step up on the ladder, you know. And then so that was my journey, though. It was, you know, last couple of years at BU doing games, and then 7 more years in the minors, and you know, then 17 in Boston doing radio before coming to Vegas.
Now you mentioned you did all those like championship games, bean pots, NCAAs, and all that. Like you've called the Stanley Cup final. Like as referees, like that's a big moment for us. Like,
Sure.
how is it for you guys? You know, because like even like the equipment guys, all of it. Like we're all a part of that team. We're all a part of that moment. And you know, like how is that for you?
Same thing, Gino. Yeah, it's you know, look, those are the games you want to do, whether you're calling it, reffing it. You know, and I always consider myself fortunate. You know, when I was in Providence, and I also think at whatever level you're doing it. You know, like when I was in Providence, my 4th year, they won the Calder Cup, and I had a chance to call that. You know, and Peter Laviolette was our coach from Franklin, Massachusetts.
That's right.
And, so, and then was able to call the Bruins winning it in 11. They lost in the final in 2013 to Chicago. The 2 goals in 17 seconds.
I was 10 rows behind the net there. Ugh, gross.
Yeah, that net too. The one with.
Oh yeah, that net. Oh yeah, that net. Yep. And my father was sitting in front of me, texting his buddy, saying, "We're going to Chicago," and I cracked him in the back of the head. I go, "You're a mush."
Well, I always thought that Chris Kelly took a penalty late, like I want to say with 3 minutes left in the 3rd period of that game, and I remember thinking to myself, if they kill this penalty, they'll win the game.
Yep.
And they killed it and lost the game. And the only thing that's ever made, and this could just be me talking myself into this, the only thing that's made me feel better is, you remember that Patrice Bergeron was in just brutal. He ended up spending, I think, 2 or 3 nights in the hospital.
Right.
After he had a collapsed lung and the separated shoulder and the ribs, and there's no way he could have flown to Chicago for a 7th game.
Right.
So in my own head, I'm like, well, part of me thinks they would have gone out there and lost 5-1. But it would have been nice to at least see it, you know, like at least. But anyway, yeah, those are the games you want to do. I will tell you guys, one of the weirdest, it's not weird, it's just the rules of the game. And that doesn't mean I have to like the rules of the game, is when I moved to television and you go into it with your eyes wide open, after the first round, there's no local TV anymore. Right. So as we sit here now, we're about 12 hours from the Golden Knights season ending in the 2nd round against Edmonton. But you know, I was watching the game last night. I watched it from a friend of mine's nice enough to invite me into a suite at T-Mobile, and then I was watching it not far from where our broadcast location is for the 3rd period in overtime. So that's the only thing. I don't miss my old job or the radio days, but it's the playoffs where that's where you're a little like, but I'm blessed. I did it a long time, and obviously got to call some big games, both be it AHL or NHL when I was doing the radio.
Now, do they pick guys for like nationally, or do they have like their own people come to playoffs? Like can you even like get your foot in the door for that? Because like even like us as supervisors in hockey, like when it comes to NCAA time, like I go and work for the NCAA. Like, can you go and work for like another like network and maybe get your name out there and have a chance?
Yeah, theoretically I could, and I've actually, truth be told, I've dabbled in it a little bit.
Okay.
A few years ago, Golden Knights missed the playoffs in 2022, and I did a couple of games for TNT.
Yeah.
ESPN kind of uses who they have in their stable. Sean McDonough would be, the top of the list. Obviously, great Red Sox announcer for all those years.
Great.
So that, and then the TNT thing, like if the Golden Knights make the playoffs, then it's not, that the first round, I'm doing our games, right?
Right.
So, and then they kind of, they've got their own, on my side of the business, whether it was NBCSN back a few years ago or now currently, it's kind of the same group of guys, which fine, whatever they're pick, they pick who they pick. But that's the only weird thing for me. And when the Golden Knights won it 2 years ago, I'll tell you, the same friend that had me in his suite last night, Shane Knighty and I, my partner on TV, former Bruin.
Yep.
After the first round, we didn't want to just go up to the press box and watch the games because, I don't know, it just seems kind of
Right.
So we said to our friend, hey, do you have room for a couple of vagabonds that could we go over to your suite? He's like, absolutely, anytime you want.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
then as they kept winning, he was like, you became superstitious. You have to watch these games from your suite. So when they won it 2 years ago, we were standing in his suite.
That's awesome.
And then when they raised the banner that next October, we were in the suite again. Right, Rosie? Hey, Rosie. Hi.
Right. Was Rosie there?
Oh, yeah. Rosie's not allowed at the games, fortunately. She's lucky she's allowed in the house at this rate.
Your partner, Shane Knighty, was between the benches the other night.
Yeah, he does. That's what I'm saying. He does some of the, he does some of the stuff for Turner, and they add they'll add an analyst, which is great for him, and he should be. He's
right.
I think he's one of the best in the league. So yeah, he's done a pretty good amount of it actually. So for him, it's good for if you're on and it all depends on where you sit. My seat, the play-by-play seat, not much has changed really over the years. But as I say, it's you know that going into it. And again, it doesn't mean I particularly enjoy it. It's weird to go to games, and it's like a plumber going home and fixing his own pipes. Like I don't really, I don't go to many games that I'm not working, except when when they get past the first round of the playoffs.
It is weird going to a game and having a beer, right? Like, because like I'm always in a suit. Yeah. You can't really. They're watching. You can't like. People are drinking all over, like all around you, and you got to be business at. And like now, like when you go, like I take my daughter to a game or something, like it's nice having a beer, sitting down, relaxing.
I'll tell you a funny story, So the Bruins, the Golden Knights' last game before the Four Nations tournament this year was in Boston.
Yep.
Played the Bruins on a Saturday afternoon. I think it was a 3:00 game, so it was an ABC game. So, but it was the end of a 4-game road trip for us. We spent a week in New York. We played the 3 New York area teams, right? Rangers, Islanders, Devils. But then that last game, we were playing the Bruins, and I wasn't doing it. So I literally had nothing to do. So, but I'm like, well, it's Boston, it's the Bruins, I spent forever there. So I said, well, I'll stay for the final game of the trip and fly back with the team. So one of my best friends from Pawtucket and a buddy came up to the game, and they had tickets up on 9, up on the 9th floor.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And again, I had nothing to do. So I actually stood and watched the game with them and had a couple beers, if I'm being honest with you.
That's awesome.
And I said, I can't remember the last time I was at a Bruins game and had a beer.
Right.
It would have to be 25 years ago, before I was in the NHL. Because for 17 years I did their games, then every other time I was at whether it was here or in Vegas, I was working the game.
Right.
So, yeah, that was kind of surreal to just be kind of sitting there and shooting the breeze with them and having a cold one.
Right.
Now, what's really cool is your track kind of mimics our track as referees, in that wheeling. Were they the nailers back then? Wheeling nailers.
They were the Thunderbirds when I was there.
Okay.
That's right.
Then they went to the Nailers. Yeah,
Did you? So that was the East Coast League, right?
correct.
Or was that all right? So did you travel to the different cities with that team, or did you just do them in Wheeling?
Oh yeah, here was our division: Toledo, Erie,
Okay.
Johnstown, Huntington, Dayton, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. That was our.
That's a
that
swing.
was- oh yeah, so yeah, we went to all those barns. And
Yeah.
I mean barns, as you guys would know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, yeah. I traveled. I traveled everywhere with the team. So at that level, guys, it's funny. I was like the media relations director for the team. So you write all the press releases. You handle the players' meal money on the road, right? You'd in Providence, I planned the team pregame meals on the road, booked the team travel, and by the way, called the game. Or if there was a scout that showed up from the Calgary Flames at 6:30 and forgot to call ahead, you'd have to make sure he had a press pass. Sometimes at that level, the last thing you thought about was actually calling the game in a weird way, because you had so many other things you were doing. So, yeah, but that was my job. Yeah. So Larry Kish, who sadly just passed away not a few months ago, he was the GM in Wheeling, and he gave me my first job for a whopping $20,000. So
Wow.
I was like, how do you spend all that money?
Well, in Wheeling, it goes a long way.
Well, my first place I lived, you're right, Mark. My first place was I lived in Shady Side, Ohio. Real place, Shady Side, Ohio. And I made my rent was $280 a week. I took $280 a week, $280 a month, $280 a month. And that included your cable. And then I moved.
Sold.
Yeah. And then I moved, Shady Side or not. And then I moved to a condo in Wheeling, closer and nicer, closer to the rink, for like $390 a month. But I remember, I never did the math when they called to offer me the job. I was living in Alston. I graduated from BU, but now this was I don't know, 2 or 3 months later, whatever it was. And I was valeting cars at Cheers at the Bull and Finch pub, the real Bull and Finch.
Yep. Tom Regan.
Yeah, exactly. Making whatever. When they went off the air, when Cheers went off the air in '93, they had the grand finale, and they had the whole cast came, and they were all bombed or worse. But it was unbelievable. They all came and watched the finale. So I was valeting cars. I couldn't even tell you what I was making. And I remember that Larry Kish called me and said, he's one of the few people in my life that called me Davey. Davey, we'd like to make you an offer to be the voice of the Wheeling Thunderbirds. We're prepared to offer you $20,000 a year, plus per diem on the road, which I think was like $20 a day back then. And if you left after 1 o'clock, you got $12 a day. And I thought, Jesus God, someone's going to pay me to do this. But I didn't do the math. Well, 20,000 divided by 52 weeks, minus taxes, minus Social Security, that's not much money. But you didn't really need much money in scenic Wheeling, West Virginia. So, yeah, fortunately, because I didn't have any money.
What was it? We joke and say on the highway it says Wheeling, next one exit.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Right. What was your thoughts on the War Memorial in Johnstown? Because everyone that goes there the first time is like, wow.
Well, the funny part, Mark, so this would have been, my 2 years were 93, 94, 94, 95 in Wheeling. So the first year, it looked exactly like the movie, right? Exactly like Slapshot. I'm talking like the wall where the announcer has to look around the wall. That's all still there. The organ, all that stuff upstairs. It looked I was like, this is unbelievable. They painted it. They put a fresh coat of paint on it in the summer of 94 into 95. And I'm like, it kind of ruined it. I was like, why'd you do that? Like it wasn't this old dumpy barn anymore, So, but I loved it. Did you do games at the old Toledo Sports Arena in Toledo, Ohio?
I did not. I worked the first year it was open, the new building.
The new one. See, I've never been to the new one.
Yeah, we just missed each other, Dave, because my first season in the Coast League would have been 96, 97.
Okay. Yeah, so I was in Providence. But yeah.
Yeah. You were
Toledo. remember the old garden had the short glass, right?
Yeah.
Remember the linesman could kind of jump on the dasher and they'd grab the top of the glass to get out of the way sometimes. So, Rosie, the old Toledo Sports Arena, the players had to walk through the concourse to get to the ice. So it's going to sound, the locker rooms would be back here. Then there was kind of the concourse, and then there were some more steps where you walk to the bench to get to the ice. So they had to have security. I'm like, who the hell designed this? But Dayton, Ohio, the boards seemed like they were 4 feet high. So the guys would have like hand time if they jumped over the boards. So it was fun. You know what? I was young, guys, and I don't know. To me, I had no plan B. So what the hell else was I going to do?
Exactly. Enjoy the
20 grand a
journey.
year.
Enjoy the journey, and look where it got you. Right.
Yeah.
Well, John,
Yeah.
we joke because there was more than one rink where the refs had to walk through. Johnstown being one of them, you had to literally walk through one of the sections down the stairs, and the door would open, and you jumped 1.5 feet down to the rink. So some of those barns were just you'd go in there going, "What have I gotten into?" And it was pretty amazing.
Well, it's funny now, guys. Look, we're all not we. I got spoiled now, right? I traveled with the Bruins. I traveled with the Golden Knights. We sit on a charter plane, and So if anyone's going to bitch about that, it's not going to be me that's going to be bitching about. Oh, the Four Seasons sucks. Like, this is terrible. You won't find me complaining about that too much.
No Econ Lodge.
No Econ Lodge, no Comfort Inns. Yeah.
Did you have to ride the team bus?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, in Wheeling, Doug Sauter was our coach. He coached in Swift Current in the old Western League. With the big mustache, the big, fluffy mustache. And so this is back in the days of cell phones, like the first cell phones. And do you guys remember they came there would be like a leather pouch they came in. They were like these big Motorola. And you'd plug them into the cigarette lighter to get them charged. So one of my jobs after the game in Wheeling was on the road. I would have to call back to 5 radio stations in Wheeling and do like a Thunderbirds update, with 60 seconds what happened in the game, like a recap, right? So back, now you could put it in your phone and just email it but you couldn't do any of that crap back then. So I would have to stand in every coach in the world sits first seat on the, that front seat on the bus, the wheel well, you walk up the stairwell and the coach sits there. So I would have to plug the phone into the cigarette lighter in the front of the bus where the bussy was, the driver. And I would have to stand in that stairwell and do here's the Thunderbirds update. Well, if they won 5-0, it's fine. If they got smoked 7-0 in Toledo, the coach would have to hear me do 5 recaps of the game. And if I screwed it up, which I was wont to do, I'd have to start over. And he'd be like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, it's already bad enough I had to watch this crap for the last 2 hours. Now I'm going to hear you recap it 8 times. That's awesome. I could feel just like a laser beam. He was staring right through the back of my skull. Like, this is insane. So,
Coaches are nuts.
Oh my God. He's like, do you have to do this right here? I'm like, where do you want me to do it? Like the phone, I have to, again, plug the phone into the cigarette lighter.
Do you have to sit here? Like, go mingle with the boys.
Well,
go work on the power play. Yeah.
Yeah, like we just lost 7-1. Like, go back there and I don't know, yell at the team. It was unbelievable. When I think about it now, like now it would take 5 seconds. Now you'd have it all. You could send it everywhere you wanted.
Right.
That's hilarious. You mentioned in college you did multiple sports. Was hockey the sport you always wanted to do, or was that the sport you enjoyed the most?
Yeah, it was, Mark. So I grew up in, as I said, in Pawtucket, former home of the Paw Sox. And I played hockey from the time I was, I guess, probably five or six, right up through high school and prep school. And then when I went to BU, I went there because, 2 reasons. They had a great communications program. And a friend of mine from my hometown had gone to BU. John Bradley was a goaltender, grew up together. And he had done a prep year, a post-grad year, which I did at prep school, and then went to BU. So I tried to walk on the BU hockey team, and this would have been like in 1989 or 90. And they were like, we're good, Dave. We're fine. We've got Tony Amonte and Keith Kachuk and Sean McEachran and the Sacco brothers. And Ed Ronan. We're good. We're fine. We don't need you. So I tried to play JV, and then I was the last cut from the JV team. So I was kind of like, well, I was done trying to play. But the broadcasting thing was always kind of something I enjoyed. Like I used to think these guys are, they get to travel with the team and they get paid a little bit of money and they get a good seat and, why not? So that was my rudimentary thinking though, guys. I didn't know what it took. I knew Hockey East and the NHL. I didn't know the East Coast League. I didn't know the old IHL. I didn't know the American League. So anyway, so that was but I enjoyed doing baseball and football. But hockey was always at the top of my list. I was one of those kids that I'm an only child, but my house, for whatever reason, we'd play. All my buddies came to my house, so we'd play wiffle ball in the backyard, street hockey. We'd play hoops in the driveway, and I was always the kid that was announcing the game as it was actually going on. So my cousins would always tell me, like even now, like, hey, if they ever ask you how long you've been doing this, tell them you've been doing this since you were 7 years old. Home run, So, yeah, that was always my. But I always loved, and to this day, like how does the announcer frame what happens? How does he frame those moments? And I still get if there's a big moment in a game now, I'll always you hit the rewind thing on the remote just quick, and I always like to hear how they put it all together.
Right.
Did you find it was like a hard learning curve doing hockey play-by-play? Because like I coming from like a stand-up I'm on the radio in Worcester and was in Boston, and the Bruins alumni asked me, like Rick Middleton for some reason told them that I could do play-by-play, and I was like, I've never tried it. I don't know why you think I can do it. I was like, I'll try it. It was the hardest thing that I have ever attempted to do, and it's like my brain just doesn't, like, you got to be 2 steps ahead. Like, did you find it was like you got it right away, or were you kind of like, oh shit, I gotta kind of learn how to like call hockey?
Yeah, I think at first, Josh, there was some oh shits in there. My first game I ever did at BU, it was a BU BC game, and you guys have been in the old Walter Brown Arena at BU.
Oh yeah.
So
Played many hockey game. Yeah.
the press box was at the end of the rink.
Yes.
If you remember. Right?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Well, good luck calling the guys on the far end of the, if you're there.
Right.
I think now they've a bunch of years ago put something like more at center ice, but like a little.
Yeah, they built a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, it wasn't in the early 90s. It wasn't there. So the first game I did was a BU-BC game, and I almost lost my voice like halfway through the second period because I was so excited. And I remember thinking, Jesus, kid, you better pump the brakes here. Like you got a whole other period, So I remember like thinking, I thought my voice was like, you guys are old enough to remember records. Remember when you'd play a 33, like an album on the wrong speed on a 45 speed and everything sounded so fast? That's what I thought I sounded like. So I was like, God, I felt like I didn't even go through puberty. And, but anyway, the answer is, Josh, it wasn't as big, I think, as an adjustment for me because I had played it growing up, I'll give you an example. If you told me now you got to go to a soccer match, it would be a crash course for me because I don't know a lot about soccer other than guys flop all over the field, it seems,
Right.
But so it was more, I had to kind of pace myself and still like to this day, people say, well, how do you know both teams just like that? Well, honestly, I spend most of my prep on the other team. I've seen the Golden Knights play for 8 years. So if I don't know my team, then I'm really screwed. So I spend most of my time, and it's more of a challenge if you see a team twice a year. You see Columbus twice a year. You see, the Bruins isn't fair because of my history with them. But if you see, Carolina twice a year, whatever it might be. So, but yeah, it was always. I thought I had a pretty good handle on it. I asked people to listen to my tapes early that gave me positive feedback, and I wanted them to be honest because I didn't want to waste my time. If they thought it sucked, then I'd go try and figure out something else. But I think they thought, I guess fairly early on, that I was on the right road.
Well, like speaking of like pregame prep and all that, like I enjoy being on the road because I can just like take my nap, eat lunch when I want to, and there's no distractions. Like, do you have like what's a game day look like for you from like time you get up, time you go? Like, do you have like are you at the rink? You doing interviews, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, yeah. For me, Gino. Well, home or road doesn't vary too much. Like if I'm at home, I'll sit at my usually up. I don't know. I mean, they skate till 11 here in
Yep.
Vegas.
Okay.
The Golden Knights have their own practice rink, which literally is 5 minutes from my house, so it's great. Like I don't even get on the highway; I'm there in no time.
Perfect.
Yeah, but I like to have most of my stuff done for the game before I get over there. So I'll probably, I'm up at probably 7:30, in and out of the shower. I sit at my kitchen island for a couple hours, and we've got two great statisticians that one here locally and another one that used to do stuff for Hockey Night in Canada that, so we'll get emails of, stuff that to think about for the game. And then usually by the time I leave here to go over to the skate, let's say I leave here at, 10:30 to make the 5 minute ride, most of what I think I need from a note standpoint is done. Now that's not, you're always adding to it, right? Like Bruce Cassidy will do his press conference thing. You'll talk to some of the players. The only thing that's changed over the years is, like the Bruins are at Warrior now, like they've been there for a bunch of years, right? You don't get to see the other team skate in the morning, but
Okay.
because they're in different locations.
Right.
The visiting team skates at T-Mobile here. But there's not much you can do about it. Everything's kind of out there on the interwebs anyways these days in terms of finding out what's going on with them to a certain degree. So yeah, that's about excuse me. And then at about, I don't know, I'm usually probably back by 12:30 back at the house. I'll try to take a power nap, Gino. I always think I'm going to sleep longer during the day than I do. I'm like, oh God, I'm going to crash for an hour and
I
a
need
half.
30 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I can get 30, I'm good. And then here at home, Shane and I, 95% of the time we carpool in, so we'll leave at about, I don't know, it's a 7 o'clock game. We'll leave here at 4, get there by 4:25, and then we're there, and then it's then you get ready to go. So, and on the road, it doesn't change that much. I'll do that same routine. I just, wake up in the hotel and write all my crap down, sit in my hotel room.
Nice.
Radio to television, because they are different in that, one's got the visual with it and one doesn't. There's definitely a transition there, because I know when I did play-by-play for, I did like the Milton cable access, did different sports, and then Curry too. When we were on the TV or the local access, it was different than the radio because you didn't have to paint a picture.
Right.
What was the transition like for you going from radio to television?
Yeah, well, the first thing I like, Mark, is the heavy makeup, right? Why wouldn't you? So that's what I like the most. So then it's funny, I get this my first year doing the games here. They have like a stylist person. Hey, this jacket looks good with this tie, and your skin tone. I'm like, hey, what are we talking about? I think I had 3 suits when I did the Bruins games. Nope, I could have been up there in a tracksuit. Nobody would have cared. So I get this package of makeup in the mail, and I was like, what the hell is this? Make sure you mix the brown with the white and this. Oh my God! Put the eye to conceal. I'm like, there's not enough makeup in the world to. But no, somebody described it to me once, Mark, is you have a much bigger band on television, if that makes sense. Like you got producers and directors and statisticians and graphics replay people and camera people and stage managers. The radio it's a pretty small band. I mean, it's you, your partner, and your producer that sits next to you, and probably the guy back in my time, still the Sports Hub in Boston, but that was playing the commercials. That's it. So, but I kind of, I think we all get this, like what's next? What's the next challenge? And for me, quite honestly, I had done, we kind of talked about it. I had done 24 years of radio. I did 17 with the Bruins. I was in the Coast and the American League for another 7 combined. So TV was going to be the next, for me, what I kind of wanted to maybe try, but, try and make the transition. But it's much different. It's a much more produced medium with replays and graphics. And we have Ashley Weiss here as our terrific ringside reporter. So there's a lot more to it. a lot more complicated than TV, but than radio. But I had done a few games. NBCSN used to do a college hockey package back probably a dozen years ago now, at least a decade ago, and I did a bunch of games for them. And after the first game I did, it was UMass played up at Maine, and I did that game. Ken Hodge Jr.
I love Kenny.
Hodge was my partner, and once I did that first game on TV, I thought this is something I'd like to try to transition to. But that was like in the fall, I guess, of 2013. So I might have been thinking that, but nobody else was. It wasn't like they were kicking the door down to. But and then when the goal, and I wasn't just going to pick up and go anywhere to do it, because I had to kind of weigh like radio in Boston and TV and city XYZ,
Mm-hmm.
But when Vegas got a franchise, first ever major league team in Vegas, and everything it has to offer, that's a different story. So when this opportunity came, it was literally, too good to say no to.
Did you want to be like, did you kind of, I'm going to say growing up, but like in your early stages of your career, was doing play-by-play for Boston like the dream job? And after doing it for radio for so long, did you kind of want to do the television? I mean, I know Jack was there forever and at the time wasn't leaving, but was that kind of, because we all dream about playing for the Bruins, right?
Yeah.
Was that kind of what you wanted?
Absolutely. Yeah. The Bruins job was the Bruins radio job was what I wanted for the longest time. And it's funny, guys. And I know, we all kind of take our paths, right? So I grew up listening to Bob Wilson and Fred Cusick do the Bruins games. Those are my guys.
Legends. Yeah.
Oh, I get
The best.
the radio booth named after Bob, and they get the TV booth named after Fred. And so those were they were kind of the soundtrack of my winters, right? Like if I was in the car with my parents going to my own youth hockey game, I was listening to Bob Wilson, and if I was home, I was listening to Fred Cusick. So, yeah, those were so that was, but I always thought, the odds of that, like, were pretty slim. I'm like, I'm like, who the hell am I? Like, I don't know. Nobody knows who the hell I am. Like, I went to BU. I grew up in Kentucky. But I don't know. Then when I spent 2 years in the coast, and then I was in Providence, I'll tell you what happens, guys, and we've all been through this, right? 3 years turns into 4, turns into 5, 6. You're in the minors. There's no money in it. And you're like, am I ever going to make it? And when I was in Providence, the NHL expanded at that time to Nashville, Columbus, Minnesota, and Atlanta. Those 4 teams came in. And I sent my stuff to all 4 of those teams, and they could have cared less. I think Nashville sent me like a proper rejection letter back then. The other 3, I don't think I ever heard anything from. So, but you realize, look, there's a lot of people who want those jobs. But when the Bruins job came open, that was a little different because I had been in Providence for 5 years. I knew some people that could maybe, take me out of the pile of 60 and put me in the pile of 10 at least,
Right.
And so yeah, that was a job that I wanted for the longest time. It's funny, a couple of years before I got the Bruins radio job, you guys might remember when Fred Cusick retired, the Bruins, remember they used to split their TV package. It was the home games were on NESN and the road games were on Channel 38.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So they told Fred, you pick, do you want to travel or do you want to do, the road games? And he decided he wanted to travel. So the last few years, he just was doing the road. And I think Dale Arnold was doing the home games, if I'm not mistaken. So Fred decided to retire, I want to say 1997. And I threw my hat in the ring for the I guess it was the road TV job with the Bruins. And I went into the old Channel 38 building, which became the Sports Hub building on Leo Birmingham Parkway there.
Yep.
I don't know what the hell's in that building now. I think it
was
whatever it is.
WAF for a while.
There you go. Right. And I went in and auditioned, and I thought it went well, and I remember, and I didn't get the job, and I was pissed because I thought I should have gotten it, you know. We all think we should get it. I understand, but then 3 years later, the radio job opened up, and I was fortunate enough to get it. So yeah, that was at that time. I mean, that was really the only job I had wanted.
That's awesome.
Now you've called games in the old Boston Garden,
Yeah.
TD Garden, and T-Mobile Arena. And I went out to Vegas this past year to see a Bruins game, and that's when we connected. And through Greg Murphy, our buddy Greg Murphy, who was on our prior episode, that place is fucking crazy. Like I'm still blown away by the sheer like pageantry of the pregame alone. From the showgirls on the glass behind the visiting team, and the knight and the siren and the freaking dragon. Like, so just compare building to building, because Vegas to me was just, I'd like to go there for 42 games, man. That was crazy. Even the noise, it sounded like you were in a concert, like your face was moving with the music.
bass,
Gino,
right?
you been out there?
I worked the Division I college tournament that they had at Christmas time, like around New Year's or whatever. Right, I worked the year right before COVID. I think there might have been 10 people in the building.
Well,
COVID
Gino,
wasn't a thing.
It's a little different atmosphere for Golden Knights games.
Yes, I think so. College hockey wasn't in the market out there.
No. Was that the tournament? Did Providence play in that tournament?
Yes, they did. Yep.
Ohio
Providence-
State.
Yes, I did Ohio State, Army. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It's you lived it, Mark. It's off the hook. The base, like you feel like the whole building's just kind of banging around, and hey, to their credit, like I always say this, they put a team in Vegas. They didn't put a team in Topeka, Kansas. So that being said, I mean, having been here now for 8 seasons, they play into the Vegas part of it, which they should. I mean, it's the entertainment capital of the world. But that I don't know the exact number. I think it's 75 or 80% of our season ticket holders are Vegas residents. I live in Summerlin, which is about 20 minutes west of the Strip. People wanted their own team here for a long time. And I know, I have neighbors that grew up, born and raised in Vegas. And they'd always have to adopt other teams, right? That adopt the Dodgers, that adopt the Lakers, that adopt whoever they wanted, I guess, right? And now they have their own team, and so they've been after this for forever out here. And good on the NHL for getting here first, but that atmosphere in the building, guys, is just there's nothing else like it. I've been very blessed to
Awesome.
Go to all the buildings for a lot of years, and look, I loved the old Garden, right? One of my prized possessions, one of my roommates from college, who sadly has since passed, but we did the bean pot together my senior year, and in the old radio booth at the old Garden, we had to climb up the ladder.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Like,
yeah.
How the hell did that work?
Right.
But you had to climb up where Bob Wilson would do the games, and so me and my buddy Rich, we were up there, and there was a photographer that, for whatever reason, was taking black and white photos, like kind of like a timeless, And he took a picture of Rich and I doing the bean pot. So this
That
would
is
have been
so
like in
cool.
February of 1993, and you could see the old seats at the Garden. And as I say, he's unfortunately has passed, but it's like a timeless. So he gave me this picture framed for graduation, and he kept one for himself. So like it's one of my prized possessions, like that. The ramps going down to get out of the old Garden, and no air conditioning, and but you couldn't function anymore. I get all that, but it doesn't mean that I don't miss it either.
Old Garden or TD Garden?
Well, to me, I just love the old Garden because
Garden.
it was the old Garden, right? Like now you can't have fog outs and power outages like the Bruins would have in the Cup final anymore. That probably wouldn't go over well, but everything has its time. I guess not everything. Like Fenway and Wrigley are still, but they've kind of they've changed a lot of it. But Yeah, the old garden. There was just, there was nothing like it. And it's funny. I think about it, guys. Like we would go, me and my parents. We'd maybe go to a Bruins game a year, maybe. I mean, we didn't. Pawtucket to Boston's about 45 miles, but it seemed like a lot longer back then. Like oh my God, I got to go all the way to Boston.
Right.
And I don't know. It's probably all we could afford. But God, I loved, just going to games in that, like everybody else did in that old building.
Now, outside in the pavilion of T-Mobile, I mean, it's like a party 2 hours before the game's even about to start. Like,
Right.
And I'm kind of pissed for a couple of reasons that the Knights got knocked out. Because if they made it to the Cup, we were going back out. We were going to a game, Stanley Cup game out there.
Especially if Rooney was working.
And if he was working, it would be even better. And we'll get to the refs in a second, but that whole atmosphere is just I can't say enough about it. It would make I can see why non-hockey fans would be hockey fans just for the experience alone.
Well, it's a show, right, Bart? It's a show. It's and you're right. Like Toshiba Plaza, right out front. They'll have bands out there. They'll have music out there before the game. The only one that you guys have been to Nashville. I've been to a game in Nashville.
Yep.
I haven't been there yet.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
They do a hell of a job because
Yes.
like where the rink is, it sits right on the corner.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah.
On Lower Broadway there, so they tie into all the country music scene, which is great. But here in Vegas, like that plaza, when they won it 2 years ago, I think there were 15,000 people out there watching the end of the game and singing "We Are the Champions," and it's nuts. Like we had the parade down the strip, which to me is still surreal. Like they had a cup parade down the strip.
That's wild.
Like,
How do you get better than that?
oh my God! Yeah, I thought the duck boat parade was pretty good, but this was nuts. And going by the Bellagio fountains and Caesars, but they had to be 30 deep on the sidewalk, and we got to Shane and I emceed the end of it, like on the stage. They set up a stage in front of T-Mobile, and there were 20,000 people. Like as far as you could see, there was just people. So,
Cool.
but yeah, it's it's all. I always think of it this way, guys. It's all based around fun. The whole Vegas thing is. I mean, the gambling thing's whatever. I'm too cheap to do it. I'm not going to give them my money. But it's all based around fun and entertainment, and the team ties into that. Like they make that game night experience. And I will say this: I've never done a study on this. I do think it's forced a lot of the other teams around the league to try
Yes.
to elevate their
Big time.
game night experience. These are not cheap. I always say it's not a cheap date to go to a Golden Knights game, a Bruins game, or pick a city.
Right.
I think people want more than just 3 periods of hockey and hopefully your team wins.
Right.
And I think, the Golden Knights have really, kind of pushed that envelope now over the last 8 years.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, their pregame alone, it could be a Vegas show. I mean, the night, talk about just insane. Like that dude, he's
Going after the bad guy, the alleged bad guy. And,
It's so good.
It's off the charts.
So now, of course, we're Chirping Zebras, and we ask everyone about the referees and kind of
They're
your.
awful.
Sell your equipment.
Yeah, no, I 100%. Gino and I are on a text thread with our buddy Luke Alvin, another former guest on an episode. And man, all we see is how the hell do you get in the way like that? How is it? It's been brutal, but like just to get your take on that, because you've seen, I mean, you've been in the league for so long now, and you've seen kind of the transition from old school, right, with the guys like Coho and Frazier and those guys, to the new school and the new referee who they pluck out of the pros and just throw right in there with no experience. I'd just like to get your take on that kind of evolution of the referee in the NHL and how, let's face it, it's gone downhill.
Well, I think too, guys, and I don't know how you feel. Like we had a play here in game 2 of our series with Edmonton where they missed a trip on Braden McNabb late in overtime. And what it's been 20. My OCD. I did research this. I think it's been 25 years since they added the second referee, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was 91, I think.
I think it was 99, 2000. It's been 25 years.
Yeah, 99.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not 91, 99.
Yeah. And my recollection of it, guys, and you might remember this better than me, was to try to, because there used to be so much stuff away from the play that one guy could never see. So I think it was to kind of try to clean up some of that. Where I get a little frustrated, and look, it's a hard, I would never want the job. I think it's a very, emotion of a playoff game, especially. I just wonder sometimes how things are missed right in the middle of the play. And, it's one thing if you miss a guy, slash a guy in the back of the leg, 2 zones back. But that's where, I get a lot, I don't think me, I think a lot of people get frustrated if it's right in the middle of everything. And I know in real time that everything happens real fast. Some things that are missed, I'm like, well, how did they not see that? If I saw it in real time, I'm just a dopey television announcer, like, so that's where, I do like the fact, and again, this has a Golden Knights tie to it. They had a debacle happen to them in the playoffs in 2019 where it was a major penalty called against them in Game 7 against San Jose. They were up 3-0.
That's right. Yep.
And it wasn't even I didn't even know if it was a minor penalty.
It cost the crew that the rest of the round.
Yeah. But again, now, so they changed the rule because of that.
Right.
Now you can review majors, so, but anyway, it's kind of a long, it's a hard job, guys. I just wondered sometimes the things that are missed right in plain sight, that's where I shake my head a little bit, because I think if you're on the goal, let's just take this McNabb thing recently. The Golden Knights had the second best power play in the league all season.
Right.
If they go on the power play in overtime, I don't know, they might not score, but there's a chance they might.
Right.
Maybe it changes the series, and there's a lot more to why they lost. But yeah, that's just sometimes where I get a little bit frustrated, because I think some calls are pretty obvious that are missed. But
like even on that play too, right? Like you just said it, it's a big moment. You got to manage the big moments in those games. And if you're not 110% sure that stick actually hit the foot, like he could have toe picked for all you. And we're talking about why he called that. How do you call that, right? He did, the stick never touched him. So like you never want to guess. So like sometimes you just get a sight line. You don't have it crystal clear, and that's a game changer, like you said. The power play, all that factors in, right? And it's all weighted, and you got to make a split second decision, especially if it's in your mind not crystal clear. And it's really hard to manage those big moments. And sometimes you get them right, and sometimes you don't.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing, guys, I don't know how you feel about the use of replay now. I mean, look, I think there's the offsides are pretty clear cut, it seems, these days.
Yep.
The goalie interference stuff, I got to be honest with you, I don't know. Like game to game sometimes. Golden Knights had a huge offside in Game 5 of their series against Minnesota, first round. Ryan Hartman scored with like a minute 15 left or something like that to give Minnesota the lead, but they were offside coming into the zone. And so I think those things are good. Like, I do think the offside thing, though, you got to have a little bit of a limit on it. Like, I watched somebody, and they're looking at it for 3 minutes. And, like, I don't think the rule was meant for that.
Right.
Everyone wants them to get it right. I do think there's got to be kind of I don't know what the time frame is, 90 seconds? But anyway, I think video has been good. I just, you don't want to slow it down too much, right? You guys know, like, let's keep the train moving along. But you guys would probably have a better barometer on that than I would.
So as far as like, rules go or preseason stuff, what do you do to prepare yourself to get up with the rules? So like when you're calling something or there's a situation happening, you got multi-penalty situations or a goaltender interference, do you vet referees? Do you have any interaction with referees? Do you talk to them at all and get their kind of like thought process on how they went through a play? So when you're calling it from an announcer standpoint, you can, alert the audience, say, hey, this is what the referees are going through right now.
They will, we don't really vet them, Gino. We don't have any time with them, but we do have is the NHL broadcast meetings are in New York, usually mid-September.
Nice.
And they will, George Peros and the hockey Department of Player Safety.
Yep.
Stephen Walcom, they will have part of the agenda is they have a whole presentation.
Nice.
And they will go through goalie interference. They'll go through some of the offside stuff. They'll go through, video review of major penalties. If there are any rule changes, one of the things that they get a little touchy on, and I do understand this, is, shots to the head these days.
Right.
Principal point of contact, main point of contact,
all
how
language.
you phrase it properly.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Which we should know that and what they're thinking, main point of contact that's 51%, right? So we should know that. How do they go about deciding on suspensions?
Right.
How, so they take us through that. So that is, I would say, I'll just speak for myself. Of that part of the whole presentation of the, it's about a day and a half in Manhattan. What they do to me is the most beneficial because, and if I had a critique of myself sometimes, I don't know the rule book front to back. I don't. I probably should know it better, but especially if there's changes, if there are things they're tweaking, if there are things that have been controversial, for lack of a better way to put it, they do a great job of encapsulating that. And, this is what to look forward to this season. And this is how we handled stuff, at points last season.
Now, do they ever give you like talking points or anything like that? Say, hey, when this situation arises, like this is kind of like the language or anything like that?
Yeah. Yep. Well,
Nice.
the shots to the head, that was one of them. I
Nice.
think they'd heard too much of it being phrased incorrectly.
Right.
And I get it. Look, these guys, they watch, in Toronto and in New York, they've got they watch every game, right? As you guys know, every minute of every game. And so I think, and rightly so, they get annoyed when the dopey announcers sometimes don't know, like, well, this has been a point of emphasis. We talked about this at the broadcast meetings in September. How do you not so that's on us as announcers to make sure that we're kind of up to speed with all that. So yeah, they are honestly, very, they want us to get it right because they want to get it right.
Right.
And they want us to be able to know what's their thought process going into whatever the situation may be.
Like even this year for the NCAAs, like we had a thing where they were clearing all the goals, right, in overtime. Also, so all the overtime goals. So like a team's not just throwing out a challenge, right? Or if you want to challenge a penalty, you can do so, and then you run the risk, all that kind of stuff, right? And it's like the announcers what are the referees going in to look at? It was a clear goal. Like I don't understand why they're in there looking at the penalty. It's like, well, this is like. You should have been educated right before that moment saying, hey, they're clearing goals this year of the NCAAs instead of just, I don't understand why the referees are in there and, all that kind of stuff. It just it makes the whole production that much better.
Well, I agree with it. If you're doing those games, or if you're doing our games,
right.
I don't know, probably isn't an acceptable answer. You should know. You're part of the gig.
I know. And it just frustrates me. I'm like, how do you not know this? We just went through them.
You can't say, well, it beats me. Obviously the easy out is the referees don't know what the hell they're doing again.
Yeah, right.
Which sometimes is true.
It's not always fair. And
Right.
sometimes it is
true.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's not always fair either,
Now, have you had had any of those moments where you went overboard criticizing an official and felt bad about it, and maybe had to apologize or anything like that? Because when I was in the minors, my boss had to call the Wranglers in Vegas had to call their announcer one time because I was shit in the bed or whatever or having a great game, one of the two, and he was absolutely just ripping me apart. And my boss called and was like, hey, tell him to cut the crap. Have you had any of those moments in the minors or anything where you kind of just lost it?
Not that I can think of. The biggest one that would come to mind to me is that 7th game against San Jose back in 2019. No, because what? I think there's a fine line there. And one of the things that we try to, Shane and I try to keep in mind is, look, I don't want to be one of those guys that just sounds like someone that's whining and bitching about the referees every night. Come on. At the end, and you guys would certainly know this better than me, at the end of the night, they, if you guys aren't noticed, that's a good thing, right? You just blend in and the game's good and clean and everybody moves on with their lives. So and it's one of my pet peeves with when I hear other announcers do it, like, come on, man, like it's not,
Right.
most nights the games are not decided in any way by the referees. So, but the one that comes to mind is I think about it now. I just think I said that night, the Golden Knights paid a brutal price for a brutal call.
Right.
And I think I kind of left it at that. Now, look,
That's fair.
not to get all into the weeds on this, they had a 3-0 lead, I think, with 11 minutes left. And San Jose scored 4 power play goals.
That's right.
The other side of that equation is, well, you could have
Stop them.
killed some of it. I get it. Right. And it always gets lost in the shuffle, I think, with this, guys. So the Golden Knights came back and tied that game. Jonathan Marchessault scored with 50 seconds left. They actually came back and forced overtime and then lost. But yeah, I don't. That's just the biggest one that always comes to mind for me. But I thought, if I went back and looked at it now, I think we handled it pretty professionally. I mean, look, your audience here. I'll tell you a funny. One of my neighbors down the street, a couple days later, he let the dust settle after that game, and I was out walking the lovely Rosie, who has her moments here of joining the show. There you go. Rosie, that wasn't an invitation to actually join the show. That was so I was walking this beauty down the street, Rosie, and my neighbor stopped me and said, "Hey, look, I just got to tell you the story." He said because he has a dog. He said when San Jose went up 4-3, he said, I had to take the dog for a walk. I couldn't watch this crap anymore. He goes, so he said, and then I heard all this roar coming from all the houses. And he said that's when Marchessault tied the game late. So he goes, me and the dog had to run back home to see what the hell happened. But he couldn't watch it anymore when they fell behind. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's oh my God. Yeah. But yeah, as I say, that's the one, honestly, for me, Gino, that comes to mind the most, just because I have no desire to just sit there and pick apart. I just don't think it's got that big of an impact on the game night tonight.
Right on. Good stuff.
Now, you bring up the replay. One thing that we've talked about is the offside stuff. It should be once the rush is over. So if the goal occurs and the offside helped the goal happen, then absolutely you can challenge it. But once there's a change of possession, and once the defensive team has a chance to clear or make a pass or whatever, or a certain period of time has gone by, it shouldn't be challengeable. Your thoughts on that?
I like that, Mark. Sure. Because I do think that, I think if there's a change of possession, they clear, and they clear the zone, because I do think there is a risk of too much of this stuff,
right.
And again, I don't think, I think the rules, it's always what's the unintended consequences of some of this stuff. Yeah. And I think that's one of them. Having no bearing on that next rush up the ice. Yeah, I think that could be cleaned up. Absolutely. I think that, and putting a little bit of give me a time, 60 seconds, 90 seconds. We've got the biggest TVs we've ever had in high def, and you can zoom in and, it's, look, you mentioned this earlier, Gino. Sometimes you get blocked out, right?
Right. Sometimes
you don't see it. Sometimes, for whatever reason, the camera doesn't give you a great angle.
Right.
But they got more cameras in number 2. So, but I like that, Mark. Yeah, I think because I think you can run the risk of, here we go again with this stuff, and I don't think it was designed for that. So yeah, I'd be on board with that for sure.
Now the Knights are out. The Bruins were never in. Who do you like now? And again, there's a couple of series as of this taping that are still going on. But who do you like this year for the Cup?
It's funny, Mark. I thought Florida was the best team in the East going in. And I think now they're probably the best team in the league. As we sit here now, to your point, they just smoked the Leafs in Game 5 in Toronto. Now we'll see if they can, finish it off. Yeah, exactly. But I like Florida. I'm not sure what to make of Winnipeg in the West. The home road thing to me is just bizarre as hell. I don't get it. So, but the other thing with Florida, though, I do wonder, like, to get back to the final 2 years in a row, as they did, now to go 3 in a row, like that would be something, because it's such a grind just to, to get back there, just to get back to the playoffs, I guess. I tend to like Florida. I think they're probably the best team, the deepest team. But I mean, I guess I can make an argument for Dallas. And quite honestly, guys,
I like Dallas.
Yeah, and we talk, we talk about what the Golden Knights have done here, and they've done a lot of good in the playoffs, and obviously for 8 years. But Edmonton's been to the conference final now 3 times in 4 years.
They're due. The Davids do. The superstars do. Let's go.
Yep. I was saying after Vegas lost, I said it's different here because I think they've been so good right off the bat. They made the playoffs 7 out of 8 years that I don't want to say people expect it, but look, the bar is set very high here because that's how they've played for 8 years. The Bruins have won, let me see if I've got the math right here. So, have they won 1 cup in 53 years?
Yeah.
Right?
Like
The Rangers, I think, have won it once in 84 years. It's hard. But I look, Edmonton hasn't won it since 1990, right? When they won the cup without Gretzky. So, but yeah, I kind of think Florida. But I guess I could make a decent argument for some other teams too.
I think Edmonton, finally found their goalie. Yeah. I think that's been their Achilles heel. They have the horses, obviously. When you have McDavid, although it was really fun to watch McDavid and Eichel go at it, 2 of arguably the best players in the world.
Yeah, that was a good battle. Yeah.
That was something special.
And Eichel held his own.
Yeah.
Oh, I think
Absolutely.
Eichel, I think is right there with McDavid.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think if anything, guys, just as a side note, that there used to be a school of thought if McDavid or Draisaitl didn't do it for the Oilers, then nobody did it.
Right.
It's not the case anymore.
No.
Before last night, so what they scored, obviously 1 goal before Game 5. I think it was 31 of the last 36 goals they'd scored in the playoffs were from guys not named McDavid and Draisaitl. So, they've done a heck of a job there of adding. They lost some guys from the team last year that went to Game 7 against Florida, but they were able to acquire guys at the deadline and, kind of supplement that as the season went on. So, yeah, it's I don't know. Maybe they are due, but you can make there's some other team like Dallas hasn't won it since they've won it once, right? 1999.
Yep.
And they've been kind of knocking at the door, right? Carolina, seems like they're in the mix every year. It seems like they go to the Final Four every year.
Right.
I don't know if that's accurate, but it seems like it anyways. But
haven't
been able to break through in a long time. So, I mean, you could make an argument that how they play, that man on man is a lot. It's taxing, but some years it seems they run out of steam. But maybe this is the year they don't run out of steam.
Watching them against Washington, if they get up a goal, they are just so suffocating. And the way they play the neutral zone, it's just like, how do you score on them? That's what impresses me about Carolina. And they are a team that plays better with the lead, or are. I mean, I guess every team plays better with the lead, but them especially, they can really lock down in their end in that neutral zone, and that's why I think I don't know, and they're big. I don't know if they can, I don't know if anyone can beat that, but if anyone can, Edmonton's got the speed.
They got to play that full court press, right? They're all over the ice. They're hard to, they beat the Golden Knights twice this year pretty handily, and. The goaltending thing, you're talking about goaltending. I always wonder with them, can Anderson stay healthy? I don't know, maybe. But yeah, and they're a team that, and it's funny you say it, Mark, Washington had the best record basically all year. And then Winnipeg went by them at the end. And I don't hear, nobody's really, now as we sit here now, I mean, they could be close to the end, but they're better than I thought they were. Washington, they beat the Golden Knights twice this year. And I was like, I think the first Vegas loss, our first road trip, we went to D.C. and played the 2 Florida teams as well. But the first game of that was against the Caps, and they beat the Golden Knights pretty handily. I'm like, so, but yeah, I mean, I think if you're I always think of this line, guys, and it's Kenny Holland, who just got hired in L.A. He and George McPhee were talking a couple of years ago, our president of hockey operations with the Golden Knights. And Kenny Holland told George, it's amazing how it all works out. He said, every season, every team goes into the year, and everyone's feeling great. Everyone's healthy. Everyone's raring to go. We all think we made, great moves in the offseason. Every year, there's only 4 teams that win 2 rounds. When you distill it down to that, half the league misses the playoffs. And then of all that, you've only got 4 teams that actually win 2 rounds of the playoffs to get to the conference finals. So, it's a fine line. I think everyone thinks all these other, you can't tell me Winnipeg's like, hey, we got a great chance, right? Well, now who knows? Right. It's kind of gone sideways. At least on the road, it's gone sideways on them,
This was the year, the NHL, and I'm sure they were excited about it. If you had Winnipeg and the Oilers play in the West, and then Toronto, didn't puke on their feet like they usually do, and of course, maybe by this time that this comes out, Toronto is in the conference finals, but I doubt it, especially the way Florida played in that last game. You could have a Canadian final and finally have a Canadian team win the cup. What was the last time? Since Montreal and back in, what was it, 83? 93? 93. And they've always wanted that. And not that I'm a proponent of a Canadian team winning the Stanley Cup. Everyone knows my view on Canada. Love the people. But, but this was the year that, and we have plenty of listeners and followers up there. So we appreciate you. Believe me. This was the year that it doesn't look like that's going to kind of, although the Oilers, still could win it. But having 2 Canadian teams in the final, it guarantees, a Canadian Cup winner.
The last all-Canadian final, guys, am I right, was at 89, where Calgary beat Montreal?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking, and the Canadians won in the 93. So, that's, well, we'll see what happens this year, but it's been, let's say, 31 years.
Wow.
31 playoffs since then. So, yeah, it's
a good run.
But as I say, these teams are, you could look at all of them and say, well, yeah, they could break through and win. I just think it's such a fine line. I'll take you back, guys, so that when, we were talking about this recently, because the Golden Knights just went down this road. They lost their first 2 games at home to Edmonton and ended up obviously losing the series. The Bruins lost their first 2 games in 2011 at home to Montreal in the first round.
And went up to Montreal, right?
And had to go up there.
Yep.
And Shane and I talk about this. Claude Julien, they were smart. They got the hell out of Montreal. They went to Lake Placid for a couple days, and they practiced there just to get out of the fishbowl, Ended up winning the next 2 games, but, they won game 4 in overtime. Michael Ryder scored. They won game 5 in double overtime. Nathan Horton scored. They won game 7 in overtime. Nathan Horton scored. Any of those games could have gone the other way. Easily could have gone the other way. So it's just kind of, I don't know. I think if you end up winning, there's a lot of things that have to go right. And you also have to have a little bit of luck on your side too, that, if you're going to win 16 playoff games, it's not always, hey, we were obviously the best team. Sometimes you have to have a little bit of good fortune too.
I think without luck or without a bounce or without some puck luck, I think every team has to have that moment or 2 to win the cup. You can pick out plays every year. 2011, like you just mentioned, just the Canadian series alone. But one bounce of the puck here or there, there's a different winner. So
I remember, Mark, the 7th game against Montreal that year. I want to say it was Brian Giunta was playing for the Canadians, and he came down the left wing, took a shot on Timmy Thomas in overtime. Thomas made the save, and the rebound came out kind of to the top of the crease, and it hit remember Dennis Seidenberg, the German tank?
He was on our episode from the Warrior for Life game. Awesome.
But the rebound hit Seidenberg in the back of the leg and was trickling towards the open net. in overtime in Game 7, and Seidenberg reached back as cool as could be and just pulled it off the goal line. Well, if that goes in, it's over, right? If that goes in, it's, quite honestly, if they lose in the first round that year, they probably make a coaching change, right? They probably, I told this, I won't make it long, but I told the story. Jack Edwards and I were sitting at the Bell Center, morning skate Game 3 of that series. Now, again, they're down 0-2, losing 2 in Boston. Now they got to win 4 out of 5, and they've got to win a couple in Montreal. And Jack and I were sitting up there at the morning skate, and us two geniuses, we had about $15 million off the salary cap in 5 seconds. Look, this guy's gone. This guy's traded. They'll make a coaching change. And the next thing you know, 2 months later, they were having a parade through the streets. Wow. So fortunately, they didn't listen to us two morons.
Now, over your years, who's been the best team you've seen and best player you've ever seen? And I guess that's a stupid question in player because, I mean, well, we all have our opinions of who the best player ever was. Of course, Bobby Orr for me. But, what's your – those two and your greatest moment calling a game?
Oh, that's a good one, Mark. I mean, I think the best player I've probably seen in person. I mean, just Connor McDavid's pretty unbelievable. It's you can make a case that maybe Sidney Crosby is probably the best overall player I've seen over the years, just in terms of complete game. I guess I'm not giving you one guy. I loved watching Patrice Bergeron play.
Yeah.
How could you not? He just played the game the right way. So I couldn't narrow it down to just one. I love watching Mark Stone play out here because he's cerebral. I made the comparison before talking about Mark Stone that to me he's, I'll go back to my Boston roots. He's Larry Bird. I said, what do you? Well, Bird couldn't run. He couldn't jump. He wasn't very fast. But with the game on the line, there's nobody else you wanted with the ball in their hands but Larry Bird. And Stone, he's not a great skater. He's not real fast. He doesn't have the hardest shot. But if you had the game on the line, he had a hat trick in Game 5 to win the cup a couple of years ago. So it's not always pretty, but they see it, right? They're very cerebral. So anyway, I mean, those are just a few of the guys. I'd have to go back to I don't know if I could pick one moment. I mean, being very blessed to have a chance to call the Bruins winning it in 2011. And then the other one that I always, somebody just was on the Twitter world, the X world, whatever we're calling it these days. It was just, we're only a couple days past the anniversary of their big comeback against Toronto in Game 7 when Bruce Bergeron scored. So
that was so good.
Great call by you too.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate it. It's just, but you know what? You're in those spots and you hope you don't screw it up. And so I think, those moments, I mean, there's been a few here in Vegas. I mean, their longest playoff game they've ever had was in the first round, first year. Eric Hollis scored in double overtime. There's been a lot of moments out here, but I'll tell you a quick funny on the Bergeron thing. So they're down 4-1 in the third period, obviously, and I'm pissed. So I've got my phone, and my buddies are texting me like commercial break. I think they got it to 4-2 with 10 minutes left, 10 and a half minutes left. So, but my buddies are texting me, this sucks. During the commercial breaks, I'm stupid enough to look at it.
Right.
This sucks. Do you want to play golf tomorrow? Blah, 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 blah. like, I don't need this. So I literally took my phone and I put it like out of my reach during there was a little table back there. I don't want to read this crap, So then they come back 4-3. Bergeron ties it, right? 4-4. So then I picked up my phone in the intermission between the third period and overtime, and all the texts were, the tone of everything changed. This is unbelievable. They're going to win. I'm like, you bastards are both ankles busted, jumping out and off the bandwagon. And then when they won, then it was, people forget this, guys. We're talking about a little bit of flashpoints and big moments in games. That team, Claude Julien kind of talked about that team. They were kind of a Jekyll and Hyde team. That was that lockout shortened year, that 12-13 thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just didn't know like what you were going to get. And I thought to myself, between the third period and overtime, they could still lose this game.
Oh yeah.
Even though they came like, I know it's obvious, but that team, you're kind of like, eh. And Joffrey Lupul had a chance. 5 minutes in overtime, 6 minutes in overtime. Point blank on Tuukka. And Tuukka made a stick save that I can still see.
Yeah.
Like that could have easily gone in. They were up 4-2 in the third. And remember Matt Fratton, right-hand shot,
Yep.
You're 39 for the Leafs. He had a breakaway
That's right.
and missed the net. Could have gone up 5-2. So just like little things like that I had kind of forgotten about. And when Patrice Bergeron retired a couple of years ago, I was back east. I was back in Rhode Island, and I was at my house there. And Nesson reran that game, and I was kind of out doing stuff, and I came in and I just happened to click it on, and there was like 12 minutes left in the third period, and I said, "Well, might as well watch this. I want to see how it turns out."
See if it changed.
And it turned out, I was like, "Oh, Jesus, thank God it worked out okay." You know? But those little things, such little things that sometimes go, separate winning and losing.
That's awesome.
So now the season's over. Obviously, you got a lot of golf on your schedule, I'm sure.
I think some, Mark, yeah. Like I always, Bill Belichick used to use the line, before he was dating the youngsters. That
That's a nice way of putting it.
oh my goodness, that
What a scene.
you'd be on the treadmill. You're on the treadmill, and then all of a sudden it stops. And I think that's kind of like, speaking of stopping, I was jumping away.
Is that Rosie? She coming?
That's Rosie, yeah. Rosie, I think Rosie retired for the day, we hope. But no, so it's kind of weird, like when the season ends, you're like, to a degree, you're like, now what the hell do I do? But some golf, and I'll be back east, and I'll probably sit my ass on the beach for a little while, which I always like to decompress.
Perfect.
And but yeah, it's get out of the oven in Vegas before it gets to be 118 degrees. And but yeah, so there'll be some downtime, which is always probably longer than we wanted, but sometimes that's the way it goes.
Well, when you come back east, we should hit the golf course for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be great. People always think I play more than I do in Vegas, and I'm like, well, like we do have a hockey season, and I do have a job, and I do travel to the games. It's not like I'm playing 36 holes a week. Like, what are we talking about? Like.
Well, Brickley does. Right?
Yeah, true.
Does.
Yeah, you say. Yeah, it's it'll get short. I do remember those days. They wouldn't get shortchanged on the golf department. That was for sure.
That's awesome. Well, Dave, we can't thank you enough for coming on. This has been awesome. It's just great to get a perspective.
Yes, thank you.
Because we've had players, coaches, GMs, but then we've had comedians. Last week, Cedric Maxwell. But it's always good. Like Dale came on, and to get that broadcaster perspective, which is a whole nother perspective. You got the coach's perspective, players, referees. It's kind of neat to get that perspective, and I love the fact that your career in broadcasting mirrors a lot of the guys like myself, like Gino, in refereeing. Start in the minors, you work your way up, and then you get to the big show. And I think that's cool, and I don't think people realize that's a similar thing, for broadcasters too.
Yeah, there's dues to be paid, Mark, right? You guys know it. Like, it's not that easy. If it was, all of us would just, for me, I'd graduate from BU and go, work at NBC or something. Like, it's not how it works for the most part. But I do think that's a good thing. And what I mean by that is, I think if you skip some steps along, rungs of the ladder on the way up, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I think you have to learn, and I'm a big fan of working your way up. I mean, you can tell me, is it 5 years, 7 years? And I don't know. I mean, it's probably a different number for everybody, but I think there's a lot of value to working your way up that ladder as you go along. Absolutely, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I think we definitely agree from the refereeing standpoint, and I think we're seeing that now. A lot of guys aren't they are skipping those steps, and they're not doing the job that they should be doing, and so it's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, like I said, it's I'm very blessed to do it, guys. It's not Shane and I always joke around. It's really I can't really do much else. Like so, I'm not good with tools. I can't fix anything, but I can yap about hockey games. Fortunately,
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
yeah.
Right on.
Well, before we go, we want to remind you to, I forgot to do this at the beginning, Gino, smash the like and subscribe button on YouTube, and also follow us on all the social medias. We're on the Instagram, the Facebook, and of course, the TikTok. And check out former episodes. We brought up a lot of former guests in this episode, including Dennis Seidenberg, episode 41, Warrior for Life. We had him, Johnny Boychuk, Andrew Alberts, and Andrew Ferentz on that episode, Dave. It was loaded.
Quite the quartet.
Oh yeah.
Those
So
guys are great.
Bruins and Canucks.
Yeah, we had the Bruins and Canucks on that one. Andrew Alberts was not happy.
Cats and dogs living together.
Right? Mass hysteria. Love that movie.
Yeah.
But find us on the social medias, like and subscribe on YouTube. Find merch and everything you need to know, former episodes and whatnot on chirpingzebras.com. And I want to thank AOA Studios for their work. Our producer, Josh Dolan, who holds down the fort when we're on the interwebs like this. And also want to thank our sponsor, the Referees Crease, and your one-stop shop for all your refereeing needs. And also, again, thanks for joining us. For Dave Goucher, for Gino Bender Jr., and our producer, Josh Dolan, I'm Mark Riley. We'll see you next time right here on the Chirping Zebras.